Macmillan Audio presents A Heartbeat Away by Michael Palmer. Read for you by Robert Petkoff. United States of America Order of Presidential Succession. 1. Vice President. 2. Speaker of the House. 3. President pro tempore of the Senate. 4. Secretary of State. 5. Secretary of the Treasury. 6. Secretary of Defense. 7. Attorney General. 8. Secretary of the Interior. 9. Secretary of Agriculture. 10. Secretary of Commerce. 11. Secretary of Labor. 12. Secretary of Health and Human Services. 13. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. 14. Secretary of Transportation. 15. Secretary of Energy. 16. Secretary of Education. 17. Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And 18. Secretary of Homeland Security. Prologue. The last thing Eddie Gostowski was thinking about on Thursday evening, the 22nd of May, was that he was going to die. For the first hour or so of his 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift as a security guard for the NYISO power distribution giant, he had been thinking about the Yankees and wondering if they had enough pitching to win the American League East Division again. For the second hour, he had debated whether to buy flowers or candy this year for his beloved Mary's 60th birthday. Eddie had been patrolling this particular control facility for most of the 11 years the New York Independent System Operator had been in existence, and nothing out of the ordinary had ever happened. Absolutely nothing. Not once. He understood his job, and he understood what was at stake should the NYISO somehow shed its entire load at once. A massive blackout of almost indescribable proportions, engulfing every place from Albany to New York City and Long Island. It was his job, along with others in the chain of virtually fail-safe checks and balances, to ensure such a disaster never occurred. But nothing out of the ordinary had ever happened at his control facility. Absolutely nothing. Not once. As he had every night at this time, Eddie set a timer for 15 minutes and prepared to take a nap. But first, one last check of things. It took him a few seconds to realize that several of his gauges had gone out of whack. The unmanned substations serving Marcy to Albany and Albany to Leeds had gone offline. Curious. Eddie began ticking off all the possible explanations for the weird happening and came up with little. If the gauges were right, and there was no way they could be, there was no longer any power going to the Capital District, which surrounded and included Albany. Still more bewildered than alarmed, Eddie moved to his left. His equipment told the same story for other substations. Dunwoody to Long Island and Ravensbrook in Queens had also been tripped. Goethals and Farragut, controlling the power to large portions of New York City, was down as well. Assuming the readings were all correct, the whole system was unstable, and the largest city in the country was on the verge of something massive and horrible. Eddie's first move was a call to the nearest manned station 150 miles north in Albany. 7 rings and an answering machine. Even an explosion at the facility in Albany would not cause this sort of power loss. Since its inception, NYISO had been closing loopholes in its system to the point where an almost inconceivable number of events had to occur simultaneously to cause any major degree of problems. But incredibly, those events were happening. As far as Eddie could tell, his control station was now the only thing standing against a blackout that would engulf most of eastern New York, including Long Island and the 5 boroughs of New York City. He raced to the phone, got the emergency number of the FBI from a chart on the wall, and began dialing. That was when he felt the point of a knife press against the back of his neck. "Set the receiver down, sport," a man's husky voice said in an accent that sounded British. The knife point felt as if it were going to slice straight into Eddie's spine. "But please, that hurts."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?